Howdy howdy! Thanks for tuning in. Today I am going to share with you the story and description of one of my favorite backstoried D&D characters, Yowler, my Kinku rogue. I love Yowler so much. I have not played Yowler in a game yet, but if I get the chance, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Specifically in terms of roleplay, because playing a Kinku is really interesting, because if you don't know, Kinkus, they're a bird-like race. They don't have wings though. The story of the Kinku is like their wings were taken from them because they stole from their god. That's probably wrong. I have the book right here that I could... You know what? Screw it. I'll read the passage about Kinkus. Here is the story. This is the book that talks about the Kinku, Volo's Guide to Monsters. And this is why Kinku, even though they're a bird race, they don't have wings, but they want wings. The Kinku once served a mysterious, powerful entity on another plane of existence. Some believe they were minions of Grazd, while others say that they were scouts and explorers for the Wind Dukes of Aka. Don't know how to say this word. Whatever the truth, according to legend, the Kinku betrayed their master. Unable to resist the lure of a beautiful sparkling treasure, the Kinku plotted to steal the item and escape the material plane. Unfortunately for the Kinku, their master discovered their plan before they could enact it. Enraged, the entity imposed 3 dreadful curses upon them. First, the Kinku's beloved wings withered and fell away from their bodies, leaving them bound to the earth. Second, because their ingenuity and skill had turned towards scheming against their patron, the spark of creativity was torn from their souls. Finally, to ensure that the Kinku could never divulge any secrets, their master took away their voices. Once the entity was satisfied that they had been sufficiently punished, the Kinku were set loose on the material plane. Since then, the Kinku have wandered the world. They settle in places that accept them, usually bleak cities that have fallen on hard times and are overrun with crime. So yes, Kinku do not have wings, and above all else, they dream of being one day able to fly again. And then for roleplay, like I just said, Kinku, they can't talk with their own voice. They have this skill called mimicry, where they can mimic the sound of any noise or voice that they've heard once before perfectly. That's why Kinkus are excellent messengers or forgers, because they can copy anything they've seen or heard before immaculately. I'm sure there's some people who've written stories about Kinku being the master art forgers. Imagine if Kinku existed during the time of the painting of the Mona Lisa or all of Van Gogh's stuff. Holy shit. That would have been sick. But yeah, so in playing a Kinku, this book specifically says don't try to make the noises that a Kinku would to communicate, because that's just pretentious and kind of a dick move. Just say what noise your Kinku makes and then explain what that noise means, which is what I did for my Kinku, Yowler. Before we get into his description, I just want to talk about his communication. So, because he's named Yowler, because he uses a lot of alley cat noises to communicate, I've got the Nerd Zone Junior here, and I'm going to talk about the communication terms that he has. So if Yowler wants to say yes, or if he's agreeing with something, he'll either purr or meow, or he'll repeat someone saying yes. If he wants to say no, he'll growl or hiss, or repeat someone saying no. If he's cold, he makes the noise of teeth chattering or a fire crackling. If he's hot or thirsty, he makes the sound of water running or the sound of a dog panting. If he's hungry, he makes the sound of a baby crying. If he's sad, he makes the sound of violin music or the sound of someone crying. If he's happy, he purrs or he mimics the noise of children's laughter. And if he's trying to warn people of danger, he'll yowl, hence his name, or he'll make the sound of a siren. And with that, I will move into Yowler's physical description. Yowler is a short, reedy little Kinku. His feathers are jet black with a band of deep red feathers around his neck, considered a birthmark. His eyes are an unusual color for an adolescent kinku, as they're a piercing light gray, like the smoke of cigarettes. His scaly forearms and legs are a dark charcoal gray, and he's usually dressed well, like in a dapper little suit, usually with powder blue accents. So, physically speaking, Yowler, reedy, little kinku. That means he's about 4'10". He's like 90 pounds soaking wet. He's not very big at all. Gray eyes, black feathers, like a raven, except for that band of red around the base of his neck. Now on to Yowler's backstory, which isn't super long and detailed, but it's one of the best, I think, that I have come up with. Alright, here we go. Yowler was born into crime on a literal level. His home, Winifred Wiggum's whorehouse in the downtown slums of Egosted. A large clutch of abandoned kinku fledglings running around a brothel was a shit show, to put it lightly. He had 7 siblings, and their parents hadn't been in the picture since dropping the young off at Winnie's. Being the youngest, Yowler was the last to leave the nest and make his way into the world. When he was old enough to fend for himself, he was kicked onto the streets and told to survive or be consumed by the city. Sitting in and observing card and dice games in the Triple Dub, the nickname for Winifred's brothel, had given Yowler an angle he felt he could work. But it turns out scamming folks is harder than it looks if you're inexperienced. Luckily, that's where Simon stepped in. He'd seen the poor fledgling getting his little feathery ass kicked around Egosted and took pity on the kid. Simon took Yowler under his wing, no pun intended, and taught him almost everything he knew. Thanks to Yowler's kinku heritage, he was an expert forger and impressionist, and Simon encouraged him to hone these talents to a fine edge. He also gifted Yowler the ornate weighted dice set he uses to this day as thanks for the Birdman forging some documents for him. Simon was arrested a few years later for an unrelated crime, and Yowler was heartbroken, but he knew he wasn't skilled enough to break Simon out of prison yet. Yowler didn't know what the crime was, but Simon's bail was an obscene amount. Yowler hopes to one day pay off Simon's immense bail, but it's going to take a long time unless he can con the right person or steal the right item to pawn off. In the meantime, he spends his days running game of chance scams and sneaking into lavish parties under the guise of being the impressionist entertainment for the night. They're chock full of shiny scores, just waiting to be nabbed, these parties. The only complication is the person behind the shiny, the one who holds on to it, but Yowler's a crafty fellow. He knows how to get what he wants. Some little extra tidbits about Yowler. He likes dice games, meat, and shinies, as any Corvid does, and he dislikes drunks, being truthful, and law enforcement. Did Yowler say ACAB? I think he did. Anyways, Yowler's go-to scam is playing games of chance with the weighted dice set gifted to him by Simon. He's exceptionally good at it since he's been doing this for most of his life. I forgot to mention, Yowler is not, his age is unknown. He didn't really bother keeping track of it, and with 7 siblings running around him in the brothel, they really didn't care about birthdays. That was too much trouble. Speaking of siblings, he's the youngest of 7, all of whom have taken up various professions. He's been out of touch with most of his siblings, but occasionally he runs into Pen Scratch and Messenger when he revisits Egosted. And if you really want to know, all 8 Kinku siblings, in order from eldest to youngest, are Crasher, Pin Scratch, Whistle, Jingle, Grinder, Messenger, and Yowler. He doesn't have 7 siblings, he has 6. How did I get this wrong? Oops. My bad. But yeah, that's the entire Kinku family that was dropped off at Winifred Wiggum's whorehouse in the great crime-ridden city of Egosted. I love Yowler so much. I hope to one day get to play him. So some allies that Yowler has is very few, if any. Yowler's worked for a few crime lords as a forger, but those jobs can barely be considered alliances. But his biggest ally is Yowler's mentor from when he was just a fledgling learning to run a scam. That's Simon. Simon's just a human man. He's in jail now, though. This is no fault of Yowler's, so he wouldn't be of much help in a time of crisis. Yowler does have 6 older siblings, but he's out of touch with most of them except for Pin, Scratch, and Messenger. Yowler's enemies. Yowler is a con man by trade, so his beaked face is on wanted posters in a number of cities. He also can't be within 50 yards of Lashana Lathalis, who was an elven woman he tried to rob one summer evening, and things went quite south. I won't go into details, but she did get a restraining order on him. Some of his personality traits include being a born gambler, he can't resist taking a risk for a potential payoff, and he pockets anything he sees that might be of value, hence the corvid nature of, if I see a shiny, I have to have it. That's one of his flaws. If it compels him to steal shiny things, no matter who they belong to. If it's a shiny and he wants it, he's gonna do his damnedest to get it, often landing him in pretty hot water. Some of his ideals that keeps him, not being completely heartless is that he never targets people who can't afford to lose a few coins. The one exception is shinies. Yeah, he might feel bad for a short time after taking something from someone who maybe couldn't afford to lose that, but it would take some hard convincing to get him to actually return it. Some of his bonds in life include owing everything to his mentor, Simon, a horrible, talented thief who's rotting in jail somewhere. But he does hope to one day con or steal enough to pay his bail. Well, I believe that's all for Yowler. I love this little bird guy. And, as always, I have some concept art I drew up of him. Here's some of his concept art. Right there. I love him very, very much. I'm very proud of how this concept art turned out. Honestly, I think this is the best version. Yes. Well, thanks for tuning in. That's about all I got for you with this video. If it's your birthday, happy birthday! Now remember, you are a valuable, wonderful human being who is loved and who matters. Your question for the day is, what rhymes with Charlesy? I'll see you when I see ya.